What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word biome? Minecraft, anyone? That was my first introduction to this concept of classifying the environment into distinct chunks like this. And if you've ever played it yourself, then you know that the transition from one zone to another can be quite abrupt. The real world isn't like this, of course, but for the sake of categorizing everything into nice and neat little zones like we humans like to do, there are some generally agreed upon ecoregions that are organized based on annual temperature ranges, precipitation, soil type, etc. I find this kind of thing to be fascinating, and while I myself am not a scientist, I am a science appreciator and enthusiast looking to shed some light on all the indie games out there that went the extra mile with their environment design. From the plants and animals living in these spaces, their geography and geology, the way that you, the player, interact with and affect your surroundings, there is a lot to dive into. I've decided to keep this video relatively simple, focusing on most of the major biome types and a few examples of games that fit into each. Also, I won't really be talking about AAA games in this video because that could be a whole separate thing, but I do have to at least acknowledge how impressive some of their environments can be. This is a not-so-scientific look into the ecology of indie games. Before getting into each specific biome, I do want to mention a few games that take a more holistic look at ecology. If you're into nature-type games, you've probably at least heard of Terra Nil, a strategy game all about transforming this sad, lifeless wasteland into a beautiful, thriving ecosystem. It's essentially a reverse city builder because instead of going into an untouched wilderness to extract and exploit its natural resources for the benefit of humankind, you enter this completely barren place and are tasked with sprucing it up and spreading a little biodiversity around. The full release of this game is gorgeous, but I am quite partial to the prototype version. It has less features and challenges, but it'll give you an idea of whether or not this game might be for you. Starting out, the soil is completely lacking any nutrients, so you have to purify it, making sure you have a nearby energy source. You can't have life without water, so add some of that and then you're good to go. Things obviously get a lot more complicated as you progress. You may need to dig into the earth to create new rivers, ignite controlled fires to create the ash that's perfect for forest growth, and a whole manner of other things depending on your current climate and objectives. But the big thing this prototype is missing is all the animals. I grew up playing games like Zoo Tycoon 2, and this scratches that same itch. Each creature requires a unique set of conditions to spawn and thrive, and figuring out how to balance all this is fun and rewarding. If you're wondering what climates the game covers, you've got temperate, tropical, polar, and continental, with a somewhat new free expansion that adds an arid region. All in all, Terra Nil is a beautifully accessible simplification of our planet's sprawling biosphere and is a must-play for any nature enthusiasts. The other game I'd like to cover here before diving into our first biome is Horticular. Again, you start off in a wasteland, but bringing life back here is as simple as selecting a floor type and clicking on a tile. You'll spend most of your time then populating the area with plants and eventually animals. Similar to Terra Nil, it has a whole habitat building system, which can be a bit tricky to figure out at times, but there are guides for each animal type that you want to attract if you need some help. This one's fun if you're more into the customization and creativity kind of thing, kinda similar to building enclosures in Zoo Tycoon, and there's a magical gnome backstory going on in the background too. I'd say this game is even more relaxed than the last, especially if you play in sandbox mode. Going from some games that cover a wide range of biomes now into ones that are much more specific, let's travel on over to the tropics first and take a look at some of their beautiful forests. Tropical rainforests, which are known for their abundant rainfall, high year-round temperatures, and extreme biodiversity, are home to many types of critters, like gibbons. These apes, not monkeys to be clear, do a lot of swinging around through the canopy, and that's where you, the player, comes in the game Gibbon Beyond the Trees. Set in Southeast Asia among the dense leafy canopy, you play as one of these amazing animals. Gibbons form lifelong bonds, which is part of the reason why you getting separated from your ape family in the game is so touching. Aside from this, there are some other hard-hitting moments revolving around human impact on the environment in an effort to shed light upon the devastating effects of deforestation, poaching, and climate change. The other main focus is on movement, specifically the arm-swinging motion known as brachiation, which is fun, fast-paced, and fluid. You can even download this super early locomotion prototype if you want to see what these apes look like in action without their beautiful forested home as a background. Slowing things down here, Call of the Sea is an adventure game set on a nameless tropical island in the South Pacific. There are a bunch of references to Polynesian culture, which means it could take place anywhere in this region here to the right. It's set on what's known as a high island, or a volcanic island, due to its steep cliffs. Now, this game does have some mystical stuff going on, and obviously if you're going to set your game on a tropical island, you're going to want to make it as breathtakingly beautiful as possible, but the height of these cliffs really isn't exaggerated. Along the coast, there are lots of palm trees, and a bit inland in the lowland rainforest, we can find these Tahitian or Polynesian chestnuts with very distinct trunks, along with lots of other plants whose identities I have no clue. One thing I noticed pretty quickly after learning a little bit more about the rainforest for this video was how dark their bottommost layer is. The canopy above blocks out most of the light, and it's only about 2% that makes it all the way through to the ground. Call of the Sea makes really good use of this idea to draw the player's attention towards certain places by creating a hole in the canopy to strategically let light through. Overall, a wonderful jungle environment to explore, even though it is quite limited. So how about an open world game set in the tropics? Tchia is just that. Set in a fictional version of New Caledonia in the Southwest Pacific again, the landscapes here are simply stunning. The team at Awaseb went above and beyond to build the entire game around the geography, culture, and ecosystem of New Caledonia, and it shows. Tchia has a huge emphasis on traversal and gives the player a ton of ways to move around the island in style and appreciate all it has to offer. And now is a good time to mention the trees. Again, but not just any trees, oh no. Gibbon and Call of the Sea both contain broadleaf trees, which are fruit-bearing and flat-leaved. Tchia has plenty of those too, but it also has coniferous trees in the tropics. I didn't know this was possible, and to be fair, these are the only places they grow in the tropics and subtropics. Aside from that, New Caledonia is home to so many other amazing biomes, from coral reefs to drowned forests, savannas, shrublands, mangoes, rainforests, and dry forests. In fact, it's one of the most biodiverse islands on the planet, and Tchia lets you experience all of it. The game also has a cool map feature where instead of just opening it up and immediately seeing your map marker, you'll have to do a bit of orienteering, using signs and landmarks to make sure you're headed in the right direction. This works wonderfully in a game like this that has so much environmental variety. So if you want to explore some beautiful and true-to-life tropical biomes at your own pace, from land, sea, and sky, this one's for you. The next leg of our journey takes us to the deserts of the world. Defined by their lack of foliage and infrequent precipitation, about 1/3 of our planet's surface is covered with them. And Journey is undoubtedly the indie game best suited for showing off the majesty that is the sand dune. There are lots of unrealistic things in this game: sandy waterfalls, magical scarf bridges, and the ease at which your character moves through the sand. If I were plopped down into the middle of the desert, I think I'd look a little more like this. This is what happens when you try to stray too far off course, and unfortunately you can't go very far, but I do love how up until the moment you reach this invisible wall, the sea of sand is endless. There's a lot of science behind the formation of dunes and their exact shape, direction, and wave pattern, but again, I am not a scientist, so instead enjoy these diagrams. In all seriousness, Journey is one hell of an adventure, and one of the rare games I think that anyone who has ever enjoyed a game should experience for themselves. This ever-present mountain beckoning you forth never ceases to amaze me, the fluidity of your character's movement, and of course the endless dunes as I've just gushed about. Now, another game that takes sand physics to the next level is called Cat Litter Dry Garden. Coots is currently spaced out. Create a zen litter garden to put Coots in the perfect mood to poop. You know, I too need to be in the... Never mind. Yay, we did it! While Journey was mostly sand with no end in sight, Sable has lots of cool rocks. Listen, I know I said I wasn't a scientist, but I was a geology major for 1 year, and then geography for another, before I ended up with video production. How fitting. Here we've got a classic case of sedimentary rock, the type that gets all layered up on top of itself and makes me think of the Grand Canyon and all those states out in the western US. While in Journey, this illusion of having an endless environment to explore gets cut short whenever you run up on an invisible wall, Sable really does let you go all the way out to that rock and back at a pretty slow pace. Very beautiful game, but not for anyone who's impatient. Riding your bike around the desert is very peaceful and calming, but in Sandstorm, this dry, sandy environment takes a turn for the worse and you find yourself in a sandstorm, which is why it's called Sandstorm. It's a quick game by Daniel Linson that hits on the effects of isolation in the wilderness that I'll bring up again a bit later. Now, we're not out of the dryness just yet, but moving a little closer to the poles, we should be starting to see some plants soon once we reach the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean biome is usually characterized by hot, dry summers and mild, wet winters, and it's a personal favorite of mine, including a mixture of forests, woodlands, and scrub. Although this biome is mostly located surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, it's also found scattered over the rest of the globe, from North and South America to South Africa and Australia. Alba, a wildlife adventure, takes place on a fictional island in the Mediterranean and is the perfect game for bird lovers. And even if you're just an aspiring birder, Alba has a convenient app she can use to scan all the different types of birds and other wildlife she encounters. Everything in this game is about nature and conservation, so you'll be picking up trash, rescuing sick animals, and ultimately trying to stop a corporation from ruining the natural landscape to build a giant hotel. I always love games that take place on small, open-world islands, especially when they contain such a variety of locations like this. From the coast to the forest, and the wetlands to the clifftop, Alba has a little bit of everything. Perfect for anyone in need of a feel-good game about running around and doing good deeds. Plus, 1 tree will be planted for every download of the game. Flamingos are native to this region, which is something I didn't know, but I do know that they poop a lot in Zoo Tycoon 2, and that they also appear in our next game. Caravan Sandwich is another one set in the actual Mediterranean part of the Mediterranean biome, this time the southern coast of France, with some sci-fi flavor to it. Since we have moved from a small island to the mainland, there are some much bigger cliffs to scramble over, and overall a larger map to explore in our cute yellow van. The gameplay consists of completing quests for different characters, collecting items, and driving around to different abandoned stations and outposts to activate machines and devices. But mostly, I just found myself wandering off to explore. We have lots of that recognizable red clay soil, woody shrubs and grasses, wide open beaches, large rock outcrops, but my favorite part of the game is this small little oasis area. I would love to know what type of trees these are supposed to be, and if this place is based off somewhere in France or the rest of the world, or if this is more part of the sci-fi planet thing. Either way, another great small open world game in a Mediterranean setting. You know, maybe I'm so drawn to this type of landscape because I need some more warmth and sunshine in my life. Not every place is dry and sunny though, and certainly not the temperate forests of the Pacific Northwest. This biome is perhaps one of the most climatologically varied. I probably should have shown you this map earlier when talking about the tropics, but better late than never. The temperate zones, specifically in the northern hemisphere, contain some very large land masses that have all sorts of different weather going on, but generally the one thing you can count on are seasonal changes and a wide range of temperatures from summer to winter. As you're about to see, your exact location within this zone, altitude, proximity to the coast, will very greatly affect what your forest might look like. Pacific Drive is set in a fictional version of the Olympic Peninsula in Washington state. Also home to a small town you may be familiar with called Forks, but with weirder weather and other topographical anomalies. Funny enough, a big portion of this region is home to gorgeous rainforests, and while it is usually raining in Pacific Drive, we don't seem to have any of that fuzzy green moss to indicate a rainforest here. But now's the perfect time to talk about location as a character, when the setting of a game is so memorable and integral to the story that it takes on a life of its own. All of the games in this video certainly fit this description. You're not just walking through a desert or a forest, but interacting with an ecosystem that ebbs and flows, gives and takes. Pacific Drive certainly gives you a run for your money and takes a while to learn the ins and outs of, and it's become one of my favorite games to go back and just hang out in. Heading just a bit north and crossing the border into Canada, we now step foot onto Vancouver Island. Obviously, things are looking more than a little different here, as shown in our next game, The Long Dark, which is loosely based off this region. It's also possible that it could be set further up the Canadian coast, but this whole area still falls under the temperate forest biome. However, there has been some sort of apocalyptic event that's made the place a lot snowier than usual. There's very clearly a coniferous forest here, but in this game, the type of tree that surrounds you will be the least of your worries. While in Pacific Drive, you could just easily cruise past all the sites, only getting out of your car when absolutely necessary, The Long Dark forces you to feel every inch of progress and the effects that it has on your body and health. Some of these forested regions seem to stretch on forever, which makes the eventual cabin or shelter you stumble upon seem so much more than just a stack of logs containing a hoodie and a granola bar. In both these games, the forest can either work with you or against you, so it's best to pay attention to your surroundings and treat them with the respect they deserve. Heading back down south and deeper east into the continent sits yet another extremely different looking forest. Firewatch is set in the mountains of Wyoming, where the air is much drier and even a single match could set the whole place up in flames. The trees here remain mostly coniferous, but now we also see lots of shrubs and grasses nestled in between the rocky terrain. Tree coverage is much sparser this high up, if it even manages to survive at all. Here's a really cool spot in the game. Very beginnings of a secondary forest among the ashes of a wildfire. I don't remember if in the game this was a controlled burn or not, but as you can see, some grasses and flowers have already filled in, and new trees have begun to pop up. Here in Firewatch, the environment is also its own character, and this time one that's not actively trying to get you killed. Just a nice tranquil place to hang out, especially if you play in free roam mode. But when I typically think of hanging out in a forest, it's usually got a mix of coniferous and deciduous trees, similar to where I grew up. A small but mighty example of this is in one of my favorite games of all time, Ghost of a Tale. 1, because you play as the world's cutest mouse, and 2, because its map design and the way you slowly open it up is genius. There are a few forests in the game, and they're the most wide open regions, although still fairly compact. I mean, walking around these mossy, fern-filled fantasy woods as a mouse, like, what else is there to say? So, a bit of a learning moment here. The next logical step in our journey north would be to cover the boreal forests of the world, or taiga if you played Minecraft. They're predominantly covered by coniferous trees due to most of the region's soil freezing throughout the year, aside from the topmost layer, making it the perfect place for trees with shallow root systems. This biome covers much of northern Canada, Russia, and Scandinavia. Our next game, Northern Journey, is set in a fictional northern land based on the developer's home country, Norway. I foolishly thought that since this game is set in Scandinavia and has a bunch of coniferous trees, obviously we're dealing with a boreal forest. But now, I'm starting to think this is actually a temperate coastal forest, which shares a lot of similarities with temperate rainforests. I don't know, okay? I'm not a scientist, but I am someone who appreciates games that are set in cool places. Northern Journey certainly fits that bill, no matter what kind of biome it's set in. However, you should not play this game if you don't like spiders. I won't show any here, but there are tons of spider-like enemies scuttling about, and they are creepy as hell. But Norway really does have some stunning fjords like this. This game has some wonderful vertical level design, although the real-life locations they're inspired by probably aren't connected together by all these rickety bridges. Heading east into Finland, we have what I'm confident is a true boreal forest in Moomintroll Winter's Warmth. The game isn't out until next month, but there is a super cute demo that you can play, and the whole game is all about learning to embrace and enjoy this sometimes extreme climate. I actually had never heard of the whole Moomin Valley thing until Snufkin Melody of Moomin Valley came out in 2024, but it's so freaking adorable and something I would have loved as a kid. And this game kind of brings up an interesting point. I'm not sure how much location overlap there will be between the two titles, but just the general idea of exploring the same places during different times of the year is really cool to me, especially when the game has a seasonal change in it, like our next one, which is set in the unforgiving tundra. In this type of biome, tree growth is limited by frigid temperatures and short growing seasons, but that doesn't make them any less beautiful. Shelter 2 does a wonderful job at showing this off, letting you play as a mama lynx and her 4 cubs. You can quite literally see the seasons change before your eyes with this cool snow melting effect, and the visuals in general are so comforting to me. Gameplay is pretty simple. You kind of just walk, run, chase, and pounce, collecting some flowers and other stuff along the way as you care for your cubs. All the Shelter games, 1, 2, 3, and a few spin-offs, put you in the shoes of some type of critter just going about their day-to-day activities, hunting and navigating threats. There's probably a whole video I can make just dedicated to them, and I'll invite you all to give me more suggestions at the end of this video. But before that, and speaking of animal games, heading way down south to the Antarctic, we have our last game and our last biome, aka the place where nothing grows. This one isn't out yet. Tried not to put too many of those on this list, but I thought this one was pretty fitting and is probably one of the only games set in this type of biome, aside from something like Arctic Eggs. Swim, slide, and explore open-ended levels as multiple penguin types with different abilities and challenges. Freely explore the Antarctic ice and the caverns beneath in a non-linear order to find out what happened to the lost expedition of explorers. Discover horrors buried under the ice and the dark history of the continent time forgot. One to keep on your radar for sure, and it's by the developer of Umurangi Generation. And that marks the end of today's long list of nature-inspired games. The idea for this video came to me quite unexpectedly a few weeks ago, and ever since then I have not been able to get this video game nature documentary style of video out of my head. Since then I've already come up with an overwhelming number of topics related to geography, natural science, history, culture, you name it. That's where I need your help. I definitely have at least one more solid video planned, kind of along the lines of this one, but after that, who knows? I could talk about other kinds of habitats and landforms like oceans, rivers, caves, wetlands, islands, or I could focus on a specific region and look at games set there and different aspects of them relating to history and nature and culture. Or even something related to a different branch of science like chemistry or, I don't know, something else nerdy. I also have a couple other ideas I won't spoil, but is this kind of educational thing interesting to people? Because I know I can't stop thinking about it, and I think having a little guidance or direction will help me figure out where to focus my Wikipedia rabbit holing. While I'm gathering feedback from everyone here, you can bet I'm already hard at work on whatever my next wild idea is, so I will see you all then.